The purpose of Safety Links is to provide the public with general safety-related information covering the home, businesses, and community with emphasis upon senior citizen-related issues, drawing upon existing programs currently being offered by federal, state, and local agencies. A broad-based, multifaceted array of subjects will be covered. In addition, contact information will be offered to those seeking direct help or support. And now, on with today's topic.
Hello, my name is Tom Hayes. I'm Director of Customer and Community Relations for New Jersey Natural Gas Company, and I'm your host for Safety Links here at SCAN. And it is my pleasure. Today we have with us a wonderful guest, Chris Gramiccioni, who's the Monmouth County Prosecutor. And we're going to be talking about, this special series is about Sandy relief efforts, and today we're going to be talking about, unfortunately, fraud that's been coming along with all the construction work and rebuild work in the county and in the area. So, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. We appreciate your being here, and again, you do such wonderful work out there. We're very fortunate to have you working here in the county for us and doing all the great things that you do.
Oh, Tom, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to get this message out. It's vital, so thank you.
Certainly. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what the task force is all about?
Absolutely. We rolled out the Sandy Fraud Task Force in February of this past year, 2013. What we learned in looking across the country in other places that were affected by natural catastrophes is there's obviously a flood of redevelopment that's undertaken after the power goes back on and people start to get money from their insurance companies. And we wanted to set up a task force made up of federal, state, and local and county authorities to help people and have it become one common choke point that those people could deal with us directly. Because what we saw is there's so many different layers that people might call. They might call their local police. They might have to hire an attorney. They might end up dealing with a zoning department or a building department. And we figured if we gave them one common choke point where everything funneled through, it would make life a lot easier for everyone.
That's great. That's really important. And we know out there that folks or especially those that are hit by the storm, that they're so overwhelmed with all the different issues. So to know that there's somewhere that they can reach out to if they have that type of issue, which is really unfortunate if they have that kind of problem on top of everything else they're dealing with. But it's really good for them to know there's the good guys out there that they can go to and get help and get assistance. So I know it's a great thing that you're offering. It's really nice that you're able to put that kind of effort into that.
And we serve as this single integrated entity. We form a relationship with the consumer that makes a complaint. You can imagine how frustrating it might be if you have to call 10 or 15 different offices throughout municipalities or county or state or federal government. Run it through us, especially when you have a complaint concerning redevelopment or any scams that you might be suffering through. We'll handle it.
Right, which is great. Again, I happen to be involved with the long-term recovery group for Monmouth County, and it's tough. There are a lot of different issues that these poor folks are dealing with, and it's even frustrating from our end when there's just so many pieces to the puzzle. And again, a lot of checks and balances to make sure that dollars are being spent correctly and all that sort of thing. So again, when they get to that point where they finally do have some resources and can hire somebody to come in and do the work, it's terrible if they have to deal with somebody who's unscrupulous and trying to cheat them out of their funding and that sort of thing. It's really amazing.
It is, and by and large, most contractors are honest and law-abiding. But there are those charlatans that are going to try to take advantage of people who are in really difficult circumstances. Think about it. People want to rebuild. There's going to be a natural inclination to potentially rush through this process. We're just trying to get them to slow down and do their due diligence before they take steps of hiring somebody or contributing to a particular charity, so nobody gets defrauded or aggrieved.
Right. Good. So what are some examples of the type of activity being addressed by the task force, other than those you just mentioned?
Well, we've taken on about 200 cases since we opened our doors in February.
Okay.
Roughly 20 or 25 of them are criminal investigations, but in large part the others are consumer or regulatory matters. Good examples include contractors who are not registered in the state of New Jersey, which is a legal requirement. You'll find in many cases contractors taking deposits or taking money from consumers and either not performing the work or performing it in a substandard scenario and not returning calls, becoming negligent or performing shoddy work on the jobs that they were expected to do. There's some insurance fraud scams that we've investigated. And we're just there to hold those contractors and those charities and otherwise, we're there to hold their feet to the fire.
Gotcha. That's important. And again, it is a shame that there are some that don't do the right thing, but as you said, there's some folks that just are good contractors. They just didn't meet all the requirements. There's some certain things they need to know and need to get straightened out in order to really be doing everything properly and by the book, so that we're all comfortable that things are being done right.
Right, just moving the collective ball forward so that the consumer ends up getting the resolution that they're looking for.
Okay. Now, you have other partners in the task force that work alongside you?
We do. It takes that proverbial village, and,
Okay.
and we enlisted federal, state, county, and local authorities to help us out. We have, for example, the Sheriff's Office in Monmouth County is a partner to us, the FBI, the IRS, federal law enforcement agencies. We're working with the County Consumer Affairs Office, the State Consumer Affairs Office, and we have some local police departments that are working with us as well. And depending on the nature of the complaint, like I said, not every time, it doesn't become a criminal investigation every time. In many cases, it's a consumer-related issue. So we'll funnel it, vet it, and run it through the right government organization, and then track it for the consumer from there on out, so they can continue to just deal with one single integrated entity.
Right. And like a consumer-related issue, again, what might that be? What's an example of something that falls into that category?
Well, something that, if there's not outright fraudulent conduct, let's say a contractor comes out and they build a deck for someone, and the deck is shoddy. The workmanship is poor.
Right, okay.
That might not rise to the level of a criminal offense, but that contractor might have moved on to try to take advantage of several other jobs that may be out there. That's something that you'd settle in a consumer regulatory matter.
Gotcha.
And the county can take steps to file civil suit in order to help those people recover. We can obtain documents and information, but in many cases, the best thing about the task force is just the collective pressure that we can exact on these contractors. You can imagine what it's like when they get a call from an FBI agent that's part of our fraud task force, or an IRS agent, or a detective from my office at the prosecutors. It gets people's attention.
Sure.
And we often will be in a position where we're just engaging in dispute resolution, and it helps when you have badges and sworn officers to help you with that.
Right, right. Always worked for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, how's the task force performed to date? You said you've had about 200 cases?
We've had about 200 that we've taken in. We've resolved 97.
Okay.
The other 100 or so balance, I told you about 10 or 15 of them make up criminal investigations, some of which are ongoing, but the rest of the balance are civil or regulatory matters that we're still fleshing out. Examples of different criminal cases that have been brought have been FEMA fraud, insurance fraud. We've charged people for defrauding residents who were trying to obtain generators after the storm, residents that were trying to have home developments done to restore themselves to the way they were before the hurricane struck their homes.
Right.
And those cases are all pending.
Okay.
They take a little while to resolve, but I hope the public understands that we're paying close attention, and the contractors even more so should realize that we're being vigilant about this.
Right, right. And it's good, and it's good for our listeners and our viewers to really understand the importance of having this task force. And again, I always say you may not know all the details, but you know enough that you know where to go to get that information, and you know that something exists. And on that note, are there some contact information that you want to share with our audience?
Absolutely. We have an office for the task force at the Bayshore Activity Center in Port Monmouth on the Bayshore.
Okay.
We're open there Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons. You can visit us there, but you can also reach us at the phone number 855-SANDY-39, or go to sandyfraud.com. That's the website, and all the complaints that you file, any inquiries that you might make, they get routed directly to our task force, and we're very, very responsive. That's the number one thing. Is the last thing people want to do is wait for days or hours for callbacks.
Right. Okay.
And to that point, we look at our mission twofold. In a reactive capacity, for example, if we're in a situation where we have to help somebody who's been aggrieved, but also we think of ourselves as trying to be proactive, to educate consumers
Great.
before they take these steps to hire a contractor or contribute to a charity. We have information, we have a guide, a little fact bulletin that we can give you, which will help you make an intelligent or informed decision on these matters in your life.
Mm-hmm. Which is important. And again, all those kinds of that information, the website, the pamphlet, whatever it is, those are those things that people need, and we all get our information differently. Some people never go on the computer, Some people want to call, want to actually talk to somebody. Other people want to read that pamphlet and all that. So it's good that you have a couple of different vehicles in which to get the information out. And again, in the areas of Monmouth County, that were hit hardest, certainly the Bayshore was probably the hardest hit in Monmouth County. So it's great that you have the force actually there.
We figured we'd put the task force office right in the heart of where I think the most damage was sustained.
Right.
And so that way people can visit us, walk into the office if they're not comfortable making a phone call or using the web page, anything like that.
Right. And it's incredible because I've been in the Bay Shore. I've been actually throughout the whole area for different things, but we've actually did some projects working in the Bay Shore area. And when you see the magnitude of the blocks and blocks and blocks of homes, we were working on a house that was probably 8 blocks from the bay, and the water in the first floor would have been up to your waist, which would have meant you're probably about 7 feet off the ground. And you don't even feel like you're even near the water, yet it's just such a large magnitude of area that was really affected by this. And we know there's so much work still to be done, but it's a great thing to have an organization like yours standing there and supporting our constituents, right? Our neighbors.
Absolutely.
Making sure that they have an outlet and have some form of protection to somebody to lean on when they run into that problem.
We have a theory. We think that this is what people want from government. They want federal, state, local, and county government working together in unison to carry out this mission for them to make their lives easier when they're going through such a difficult time in their lives. Mm-hmm. And that's the concept behind the task force.
That's great. And again, Monmouth County does do a great job with working together, get involved with a lot of different organizations and groups within the county. And I do love to see that, especially as a resident and a taxpayer, that you see folks working together as opposed to everybody doing their own thing and spending double the money to get the same things accomplished. So,
absolutely.
I guess it's our freeholders that get the credit for that in a certain level, but all you guys really doing a good job working together. It's great, and you're friendly and you're personable and you're out there, and I think that's key also, because people need to know who they have out there that are in these positions, and it's important, and you're doing it, which is great, and this is one of those examples of being able to come out and actually speak to our audience, which is a great group of folks that often do need that kind of information as well.
I think you're 100% right, and people in these situations, they need people that they can trust, and I'm telling the people that are listening in the county that they can trust us to get the job done for them. We're going to lend a willing ear, we'll be very responsive, and we'll do our level best to try to get resolution for whatever issues you're going through.
Right. Good. That's great. Now, how can people recognize they're being targeted by an unscrupulous contractor? Like, what are the signs that you typically see coming out that somebody can kind of look for?
Well, there's a number of signs, and we have them in these guides that I've described, but I'll give you a few examples. Is if you invite a contractor out, and let's say they're hesitant to give you a written estimate, mm-hmm. or they want to charge you for a written estimate. Most estimates for this type of work are free. Mm-hmm. That should be a red flag for people. Or let's say you do contract for a deal and they don't want to give you a written contract. That is a big red flag. If they're not willing to memorialize the understanding in writing, a consumer ought to be concerned. Consumers can also check through the State Consumer Affairs website to see if that contractor has been lawfully registered in the state. Because you can't do this type of business unless you register. If they're not registered, that should be a concern. These are just a few of many examples that people would treat as red flags. Mm-hmm. A high-pressure salesmanship. I need a deposit from you right now, and if you don't give me one now, I'll never be able to get to your property for the next 6 to 12 months.
Right.
Or deposits will generally be, business practice is a third deposit, and then you pay the second third upon completion of the work, and then you pay the last third once the job is finished. If anybody is trying to treat it differently, trying to get you to give an incredibly large deposit, that should be a red flag for people. Right. And there's a whole host of them, Tom. This guide, we've made sure that this has been published throughout municipal police departments and municipal agencies and buildings, as well as at our office and in the county, and of course the task force. This has a lot of helpful information for people that are in that position trying to vet contractors. And the same goes for people who are interested in giving to charitable organizations. There's unfortunately a number of scams out there, and it's not easy to navigate, but
right.
we give you a lot of tips, and we can always pick up the phone and call us. We're willing to give you informal advice on it too.
Excellent. That's great. And again, just give us the number again to call if folks wanted to reach out to you.
Sure. It's 855-SANDY-39, and the web page is sandyfraud.com.
Okay, great. All right, at this point we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And we'll be back after this important message to continue our conversation with the Monmouth County Prosecutor, Chris Gramiccioni. and stay tuned.
Make your home more energy efficient with the New Jersey Natural Gas Save Green project. Take advantage of rebates and incentives up to $15,000. Replace your inefficient HVAC system and upgrade to high-efficiency equipment. Reduce air and duct leaks and install proper insulation. Call Save Green at 877-455-NJNG or visit SaveGreenProject.com and learn how you may qualify for up to $15,000 in rebates and incentives. Call 877-455-NJNG.
Welcome back to Safety Links. I'm Tom Hayes, Director of Customer and Community Relations for New Jersey Natural Gas Company. And again, we're very fortunate to have the Monmouth County Prosecutor, Chris Gramiccioni, with us to talk about issues related to Superstorm Sandy. And in this case, unfortunately, about fraud-related issues that have come about since all this reconstruction has been happening. So, Chris, again, welcome back. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate that. Before we went to the break, you were talking about your brochure and some of the information that's in there. You also gave us the phone number of contact. But are there some other things in the brochure that you think are important to mention to our audience? Things that they'll find in there in particular?
Absolutely. It doesn't just include red flags when you're dealing with a contractor or a charity. It lists a number of red flags, actions or behaviors or business practices that a consumer ought to be concerned about. It also lists a number of good business practices which would indicate to that consumer, I'm dealing with somebody that can be trusted. So it doesn't just, it's not all bad. There's actually information that you can use in making that decision. And that's a big decision for these people who've lived in their homes for a long time. So you can't make it lightly. I think there's a natural inclination for people to want to rebuild and get their lives back to the way they used to be. I'm trying to encourage people to just slow down even a little bit and make as best a decision as you can make, because you can't always go backwards on this without a lot of legal involvement and a lot of delay and red tape.
Right, so you definitely want to get it right the first time.
Yes, sir, that's right.
But another thing that you mentioned struck a chord with me that I hear a lot. It's when you talk about contractors that come to the door and they say, well, you know, it's now or never, either you know, give me the money or I have to go away and you might not get another contractor. I do feel there's a lot of that feeling out there, right? A lot of angst with folks that want to get their homes done, and somebody, you know, they invite somebody into their home to give them an estimate or whatever, and if it seems like instead of being treated like the customer, it's almost like, you know, if they're doing you a favor. So folks feel somewhat, I guess, backed into the corner that, well, they better just do this, and even though they're not getting a contract or some of the things that you mentioned, making sure that they're you know, registered in the state, they could say, well, you know, well, geez, nobody's registered because we're all from out of state because there's so much work here. So, you know, if you want me to do the work, I'll do it for you, but you got to get going now, right? So there's a lot of pressure for these folks, and they can succumb to that. You know, that's like going into a car dealership or anywhere else, you know. Folks that are trained into kind of getting what they want know how to work people. And unfortunately, these are victims, and we just want to make sure they're not going to be victims all over again with the construction, right?
You're 100% right. And if you experience those high-pressure tactics and salesmanship, I would encourage people to just look elsewhere. Another red flag. If I bring a contractor in my home, I'm going to ask for past examples of successful work that they performed, and I might want to call and do my due diligence on that. If they're hesitant to give that out to you, that should make you want to turn the other way and find someone else. But you're right. It's a matter of supply and demand. You don't have to be an economist to understand that there's a lot of demand for contracting services here now that we're starting to rebuild in Monmouth County and along the shore. And that's going to cause a lot of supply to come in, especially from out of state. So people have to be vigilant to protect their interests before they take these big steps of hiring people to rebuild their homes and livelihoods.
Right. If somebody does have a contractor, I'm not sure if you would know the answer to this, but if somebody does have a contractor come to the door or is interested in starting this process and looking for a contractor, do you know of any place they can go, like Consumer Affairs, or is there a certain area that there is some sort of list of reputable contractors or something like that?
There is. I mean, you can go to the Better Business Bureau website. Many companies are registered there. The State Division of Consumer Affairs, I mentioned, they have a listing of all the registered contractors who are legally allowed to perform business here in the state of New Jersey. That's a good place to start, because if they're not on that list, then that means they haven't registered, and, you know, maybe there's a good reason for it, but it would be enough for me to turn away and look for somebody who's actually followed the law.
Right, gotcha. And again, the contractors coming in out of state, which again we know there's a lot of folks because of all the work here. Do you have any idea how long it takes for them to register? So if somebody was to come to somebody's door and say, you know, yeah, I'm a contractor, from out of state, and I'm not registered yet, is there some idea of how long it takes them to register? Like, is it a couple of week process, or, you know what I mean? Is there some reason why somebody might say, well, it might be worth having them come back in a week or two when they have their registration in place?
I do, and it's a ministerial step. You can do it online.
Okay.
It's registration, and it's simple as that. You can fill out an online form, and that's a good point. If they're not registered, encourage them to do so, and if they don't, then find somebody that is.
Yeah, right. Okay, so it's not a complicated, so they can't win you over on that argument.
Well, think of it like this. If you're an out-of-state business and you want to come in here and run thriving business to help out people that are suffering through this post-storm scenario, aren't you going to take the basic, simple step of registering your business?
Right.
I mean, that's a good sign if a company's not willing to at least do something as basic as that. That's a good red flag. I keep hearkening back to that term, but it's a good way to put it.
Right. No, that's good. Good to know. Now, what tips do you have to offer to any victims or potential victims? I guess so. Victims, folks that are already dealing with this, or folks that feel like now they think, uh-oh, I think I might have a problem here, but don't really know for sure yet.
The biggest tip I have is that's what we exist for. The task force is there to help you. Call us, visit us, send an online inquiry. We're really responsive. We can help you with these things. We can talk you through them to determine if it's something criminal or a civil or regulatory matter. We can take you through the steps on what we can do to try to help you. And instead of having to have you do it yourself, we'll do many of those steps, as many as we can for you. And we also, recently, we've teamed up with a volunteer legal organization that provides free legal advice in a joint clinic. It was the last couple months we've done that. So you may be eligible for some free legal advice as well if you have to take it to the courts.
Excellent.
So we're encouraging everyone to use us as a resource. That's why we exist.
Great. So that's great. So even if what they needed was just strictly legal help, they can go to your website or call your number, and you can help direct them to those folks and even just get that kind of support.
Absolutely.
If they qualify or whatever, right, meet some requirements.
Absolutely. If somebody complains about a job that was underperformed or not performed at all, that's not necessarily a criminal offense, but we use the County Consumer Affairs Office and the State Consumer Affairs Office to go ahead and file the civil complaints in order to get somebody to take action there. And this is above and beyond if we can't use our task force members to exact that pressure I was referring to early.
Right.
The collective pressure of the badge, to put it one way. When many companies, when they're approached by a detective or an agent or somebody in law enforcement, and they're told, look, we have this complaint and you need to resolve it yesterday, they take quick action because they don't want law enforcement agencies paying attention to their businesses and their actions.
Right.
And many of them, it's often just an oversight, or it's just simple negligence. There's not an intentional act behind most of them.
Right.
You can imagine how much business they might be experiencing.
Right.
But that gets their attention.
That's good. And that's a good point, too, because, as you said, not everybody's doing something wrong.
Right.
They may just be missing steps, or there's a consumer in their home or waiting for their home to be redone, and they're not getting that phone call back, and now they're getting nervous, and, geez, the contractor hasn't called me back. I gave them a deposit, and now, did they run off with my money? And, in fact, it may be that they didn't. They're just very busy and overwhelmed, but they get a call from you or a knock at their door with the badge, and they're like, oh, yes, we'll call that person right away. And it may just help smooth things over that need to be smoothed over, as opposed to, like you said, a criminal situation.
Usually a consumer that has a complaint, they will come in and they'll have all of their documents and their history of the communications with that contractor in order. And that's usually what will happen. There'll be a pattern of a failure to return a call, or inquiries about checks that have been written, when's the job going to be done, and just an outright failure to communicate with the customer.
Right.
That's where we step in.
That seems to be something I've been aware of for all my years, I guess, that sometimes contractors, they're good at what they do in terms of the work, but the communication part sometimes is a little lacking. It's not that they're bad people, it's just not their forte. They're into building and getting stuff done in that sense. They're not always so good in the back office. It depends on how large they are and all that sort of thing. But oftentimes that's the issue, and as you said, people get involved, even the contractors get involved in the project. It turns out to be much more than they thought the original scope was, because as they remove whatever, floorboards or whatever, they find more problems. Now when they thought they were going to get to you next week, it's now 2 weeks, and yet the problem is they're not necessarily calling you to let you know that, so you're getting nervous thinking they're not coming.
Right, and that's why I'm glad you asked that question. A lot of times contractors are dealing with subcontractors or waiting for materials or parts, so there's other factors that are external to their operation that might be contributing to whatever delay is ongoing. And I'd encourage people in the county and consumers to bear that in mind. By and large, I said, most consumers are honest and law-abiding. They want to do good business, they want to do good work, and help people that have been hurt by this storm. But just be vigilant, and when you feel like you're not getting the response that you're looking for, that's what we're there for.
Right, but don't call you the first. If the contractor called you in half an hour, you don't call right away, right?
We'll usually, when we get those types of calls, we'll say, look, just develop a little greater of a pattern in attempting to try to communicate with them. Many customers will have done so several times by phone and even put a couple letters in writing. And that is enough of a foundation for us to say, okay, this contractor might be blowing them off. Maybe we need to make a call.
Right, tricky.
Right.
Now, how can people report their concerns if they believe they have been targeted by a contractor? Basically, go through the phone number you gave us and all that.
Right. Whichever way they're most comfortable, they can come visit us in person on Tuesday morning or Thursday afternoon at the Port Monmouth Activity Center, or they can use the website or just call our hotline 855-SANDY-39.
Okay, which is great. And do you have a like, I'm just curious, do you have a large staff answering that, or is it just your basic office, like you're just handling it in your day-to-day work, right? Probably pulling that in?
The staffing, we actually have staffing that varies anywhere between 3 to 7 bodies. I use the term bodies loosely, but it's different county and federal employees. There's a couple federal agents. There's a full-time prosecutor that handles this responsibility that works at my office. There's a county consumer affairs employee that works with us, and it depends on the volume. It really depends on the volume, but it's an all hands on deck exercise for us. So if there's customers that need help, then we're going to draw from within my organization and other organizations that are helping us out.
Great. And before we close here, is there a particular example that you're familiar with, or one that you think is pretty much epitomizes the situation that you find most people could run into?
I'll give you a good example.
You don't have to give us names, of course.
No, that's okay. We just recently charged, in the last 48 hours, we charged an individual who was a contractor doing business with some people in Rumson. The people in Rumson, families in Rumson, had written in excess of $40,000 of checks for this contractor to fix their homes, and from damage from the storm. And for months and months and months this had gone on, and he's just been completely unresponsive.
Wow.
And the state alleges that he actually took steps to conceal and deceive the consumer by certain particular communications that we allege. So whenever we hear evidence of concealment, as prosecutors, we consider that good evidence of what's running through someone's mind, and we would argue to a jury that that is evidence to prove that he intended to defraud these families. Now, I qualify everything by saying, these are all allegations by the state, and certainly that person's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But that's a good run-of-the-mill example.
Yeah, wow. It's a shame that happens out there, but we know it exists, and thank goodness there's folks like you out there protecting us. So again, I really want to thank you for your time. I really want to thank you for this program as well as all the others that you do. I know you're involved in a lot of different issues, and I know your time is very valuable, and we appreciate your spending the time with us on Safety Links to really inform our folks about the programs that you offer. And wish you the best of luck with everything going forward, and continue to do the great work, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Tom. The attention to this is vital to the whole program's success, so thank you.
Great, thank you.